É este gajo. Porra, é demasiada gente. É que já entrevistaram o porteiro do hotel, do sítio onde eles tinham a casa, a penthouse. Aí, ó, Léo, fogo só agora. Agora estou a demorar imenso.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff calls Edward White.
Okay, thank you.
Edward White. Veio aí o senhor. Quem será o senhor Edward White? Vê a escola doente. Porque eu não sei o que é a escola doente, bro.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case with the penalty of law?
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Então ele não disse good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. White.
Good afternoon, Counselor.
Will you state your full name for the record?
Yes, Edward White,
Where do you reside?
Los Angeles, California.
Full name é Edward White.
How are you employed?
Many years ago, I founded Edward White and Company, Certified Public Accountants, and I am the managing and senior partner of the firm.
Okay.
What is a certified public accounting firm?
A certified public accounting firm is authorized by a particular state, in my case, California, to audit financial information and to certify
Estranho, bro.
the statements related thereto.
What's the nature of the work that's done at Edward White and Company?
It's diversified. It includes providing
Aí, pronto, mano. Lá veio estes gajos spamar,
tax-related
mano.
compliance services, that is to do the tax returns for the clients. That's both fiduciary, corporate, individual, as well as partnership work. We also are involved in providing financial statements for financial institutions
Okay.
and for governmental agencies. We, in addition to that, have a business management department and provide a wide variety of services in that capacity.
Okay.
Are you the Edward White of Edward White and Company?
Yes, I am.
Who do you employ?
We employ a very talented group of professionals that have really amazing credentials. They have graduate degrees from NYU and USC in business administration as well as taxation. Many of my colleagues have been with the firm for over 25 years, in one case for 35 years. I'm very proud to be associated with this group of people.
Who are your principal clients?
We represent approximately 100 high net worth individuals and the companies that they own and operate. In addition to that, we do work for governmental agencies such as the Department of Justice, the state of Alaska, the state of California, and the city of Long Beach.
Uau. Grande cena.
What's
puto.
your educational background?
Acaba no final do mês e começa
I
outro,
started my
Cardoso.
college career
É sempre assim.
utilizing the GI Bill. I served 4 years in the Air Force and was fortunate enough to have that opportunity. My undergraduate degree was in business
Olha, a juíza
administration.
serviu 4 anos na
I have
Marinha.
a master's degree in business administration from the University of Southern California. After completing my graduate degree at USC, I took several tax classes, corporate, fiduciary, estate and gift, and subject matters such as that.
Do you have any other experience with education?
Yes, I was a former professor of accounting and taxation at California State University, located in Los Angeles, California.
Grande cena.
What kind of work do you
É isso que vamos
pursue?
ver ainda, Safari.
The work I do is primarily transaction-oriented. Acquisitions of companies, dispositions, that is buying or selling a company, arranging financing with large financial institutions, consulting with clients where they feel it's appropriate for me to be involved, assisting my colleagues. As I mentioned to you, we have approximately 100 high net worth individual clients, and there's always something that I can contribute to.
Ok.
Do you hold any certifications?
Não sei,
Yes,
pá.
I'm certified in financial forensics by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. I'm also a member of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the California Society of Certified Public Accountants.
Foda-se, este
And, of
homem
course, I'm a
faz
certified
tudo.
public accountant.
What are financial forensics?
That's an attempt to ascertain not only the facts, but what transpired as it relates to financial activity.
Ok.
So you do a study based upon financial records, you then look at contracts, you look at other financial information in an attempt to, once again, not only ascertain what the results were.
Deve ter a ver com
but
aquilo
cost
que ela reteve.
Have you
Que a Hard reteve, tipo, ou seja, que ela disse que ia doar para a caridade
Yes, I've been
e não
accepted
deu.
as an
Será que tem a ver
expert
com
witness
isso?
in both the California court and the federal courts, and I have testified in matters involving the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Eu nunca conheci ninguém com dois nomes
do you
só.
serve on any
Vou
boards?
ser sincero.
Have you served on any boards?
Objection, relevance, Your Honor. This witness is not being proffered as an expert in this case.
All right.
Wasn't
This is
designated.
just a fact witness and not an expert
In
witness.
fact, witness and it goes to credibility.
But I'll sustain the objection. I think we can move on.
Ok.
Do you know Mr. Depp?
Yes, I do.
How'd you come to know Mr. Depp?
I met him because he was introduced to me by a senior executive at the Bank of California, Richard Smith.
Do you work with Mr. Depp?
Yes, I do.
In what capacity?
We are his business management firm.
How long have you served in that capacity?
By approximately 6 years.
Ok.
What does that role involve?
Processing, managing
Ele
his
tá feliz.
financial affairs. As you know, Mr. Depp is an amazing talent, internationally acclaimed for his work, but he relegated his financial activities to me and my colleagues.
Ok.
So we provide a wide variety of services for him.
Do you do this kind of work for other
Proposições? Como assim
Yes, we do.
proposições? Tipo de
Numerous
Garcia ou
other clients.
não sei o quê. Não. Não conta como nome.
When
Isto não é um
did you
nome.
first become involved with Mr. Depp?
Claro que não, puto.
Approximately
The
6 years ago, after the introduction from Mr. Smith.
Isso é um disparate.
What was the nature of the work that you were to perform for him?
Initially, it was to perform a forensic study, evaluate his financial affairs, and to formulate recommendations on how he could manage his affairs in a more advantageous manner.
Ok.
After you conducted that analysis, what did you do?
I met with Mr. Depp, the purpose of which was to share with him the results of our findings and to make recommendations on how he could resolve the issues he was confronting.
Ok.
When was that meeting?
That meeting was on April 21st, 2016.
Ok.
Who called the meeting?
I did. I called the meeting because I felt it was appropriate to meet with Mr. Depp and to discuss his affairs and to provide him with opportunities and plans and strategies to resolve the issues he was confronting.
Ok.
Where was the meeting held?
It was held at his offices in Los Angeles, California.
Ok.
Do you know approximately what time it began?
It began at approximately 7:30,
Já, Almeida.
and my recollection is there were 7 people in attendance, including Mr. Depp and myself.
7 pessoas.
Was alcohol served at the meeting?
Not to my recollection. I don't recall any alcohol being consumed.
Ok. Ricardo, como é que é?
Did Mr. Depp stay for the entirety of the meeting?
Oh, yes. He was very interested in the contents. He asked very thoughtful questions. He was fully engaged and fully sensitive to the matters that we were discussing.
Did there come a time when Mr. Depp didn't participate in the meeting?
No, he was very actively involved. He did excuse himself on 2 or 3 occasions. It's my understanding that he was going to contact Ms. Hurd and attempt to respond to her concerns and also address the fact that this was an extremely important meeting and that it involved his financial viability and that he felt it imperative to stay and address the issues I was discussing with him.
Ah, então a gaja estava a chateá-lo para ele bazar.
At approximately 9:30.
Ok.
So it went for approximately 2 hours.
At the conclusion of the meeting, what did you deserve?
Mano, eu quanto
What
mais
did you
testemunhos
observe
vejo disto,
as to Mr. Depp?
mais acho que tipo o gajo é uma pessoa
He was
incrível.
fully engaged once again. He thanked me profusely for not only addressing the problems, but he was excited about the fact there was a strategy and a plan to resolve the problems.
Uau.
Did he appear impaired to you in any way?
No, to the contrary, I found him to be.
I'm sorry, sir, there was an objection. All right, what was the objection? I'm sorry. Leading?
Just I asked him for his observation as an impairment.
Well, if you want to ask different, I'll sustain that objection, but you can ask another question.
Did you make any observations as to Mr. Depp's potential impairment?
It was readily apparent to me that he was actively involved in the conversation. He asked very thoughtful and
Pois são
prudent
todos
questions.
testemunhas dele, já.
He was genuinely
Não sei quando é que foi os testemunhos da Amber, mas acho que também não há.
Profusely for not only addressing the issues, but formulating a strategy and plan to resolve them in a successful manner.
Did you play any role on Mr. Depp's behalf with respect to the dissolution of his marriage to Ms. Heard?
Yes, I was actively involved in the negotiations of the separation and the marriage dissolve.
Ok.
What role did you play?
Portanto, ele teve papel no divórcio, é
In my
isso.
capacity as his business manager, I understood his financial capacity and the tax implications associated with it. So I was actively involved in addressing those issues as they were forthcoming from counsel.
Como é que é, Tank?
You mentioned tax implications. What are you talking about there?
Excuse me?
I think you just mentioned tax implications. What are you talking about there?
Well, what I was talking about is that when Ms. Heard began the negotiations, she was asking for approximately $4 million.
Ok.
That
Objection, Your
balance
Honor.
then was
Foundation,
increased.
Hearsay, lack foundation, hearsay.
These are requests made by Ms. Heard and her counsel in a conversation, in communications.
Here, you want to approach for a minute.
Certainly.
Pronto, vão lá acima. Approach. Ok. Eles cortam a conversa quando eles dão approach ao juízo.
Of your involvement on behalf of Mr. Depp in the negotiation, what was your understanding of what Ms. Heard was looking for?
She initially was looking for a consideration of $4 million, but her demand continually increased. It went from $4 million to $5 million. Then it went from $5 million to $5.5 million. Then it went to $7 million.
Wow.
And then
It's
it was $7 million, and she demanded that Mr. Depp also pay $500,000 to her attorneys. Then, after that consideration, she also said that all the community liabilities that were accumulated
Objection,
during the
Your
course of the
Honor.
marriage, which approximated
Sorry, there's an
$13.5 million.
objection, sir. Whenever there's an objection, I'm sorry. If you can't hear, I'll let you know. Okay?
Thank you, Your
Yeah,
Honor.
no problem,
This just
sir.
goes into his allegations of what she said, which Your Honor just instructed, sustain the objection on that. He has no foundation to suggest that. No knowledge of that.
Your Honor, I understand that. I asked his understanding.
All right, I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
May I continue?
She'll tell you yes.
Yes. Go ahead. Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
He learns very well.
So the next demand was that all of the community liabilities that were unresolved, approximately $13.5 million, that Mr. Depp had to pay those liabilities. in its
Coitado deste
entirety.
senhor, mano.
So at that
O
point,
senhor deve estar nervoso,
she
sabe?
was demanding $14,250,000 of consideration.
Mano, imaginem, puto. A gaja começou por pedir 4 milhões e no final já estava a pedir 14. Mano, what the fuck, bro?
And then it got worse. The next demand was that all of this consideration be paid to her free of taxation.
What the fuck?
And counselor, for him to pay $14,250,000 to Miss Heard, that would require him to earn approximately
Objection, Your Honor.
$30
This
million.
is so far beyond the scope, so far beyond his foundation of what was discussed.
All right, I'll sustain that last answer. All right. Next question.
Did you make a proposal as to how payments would be made to Ms. Heard?
Yes, I did, and they were initially contemplated to be paid directly to the charities. The
Sabem
charities-
uma coisa? Eu acho mesmo que este senhor gosta bué do Johnny. Tipo, ele estava a dizer, ele já estava, ou seja, esta cena foi feita objection porque ele já estava a desviar-se bué do caminho e a ficar bué emocional, a dizer que tipo, man, para ele pagar 14 milhões sem tax e as tax tipo, sem os encargos de fiscais, era tipo uma cena, não é taxas, é os encargos fiscais. Tipo, para ele isso ia tipo arruiná-lo, basicamente. Era o que ele ia dizer, estão a ver?
Hospital Los Angeles, with the benefit
Sim,
of the children.
o advogado está a fazer o trabalho dele, mas lá está, man. O senhor nota-se que tem ali. Pá, é o que eu digo, man. Todas as pessoas que vêm testemunhar podem ser testemunhas do Depp, man. Mas todos eles nota-se que há tipo um certo amor pela pessoa, man. Percebem? Tipo, nota-se que há um certo amor destas pessoas. São tipo pessoas que trabalham com ele, não são amigos, estão a ver? Este senhor trabalha só com ele, é o contabilista dele. Da mesma forma que aquela psicóloga também é só a psicóloga dele. Percebem? E todos eles, até o gajo da porta, até o porteiro, testemunhou de forma, tipo, parece que gostam da pessoa, estão a ver?
Required severe medical service and to the ACLU. During the course of the negotiations, one of the demands, because the contract changed, was that the payments be made directly to Miss Heard.
Okay.
Did you have any personal involvement with either the ACLU or the Children's Hospital?
Yes, I did.
What was that?
Mr. Depp directed me to issue two $100,000 checks directly to the Children's Hospital Los Angeles. I knew that he was involved and supported their efforts and appreciated his service. In addition to that, he directed me to contribute $100,000 to ACLU. In accordance with his instructions, my colleagues drafted the checks, I executed them, and they were delivered to the two charities.
Ok.
Did
Fixe.
you continue making payments to either of those charities on Ms. Heard's behalf?
No, in fact, I was chastised for making the payments by Ms. Heard's counsel and told that the payments in the future had to go
Objection, Your Honor.
directly to her.
This is clear hearsay. He's not answering the question. I would ask for you to instruct him to answer the question and not expound upon his.
I'll sustain as to hearsay. Next question.
Eles estão a ficar bué de fodidos, mano. Os gajos estão a ficar bué de fodidos. Ele disse basicamente que os advogados da Amber passaram-se com ele por ele ter feito os pagamentos, meu. O homem deve ter tanta merda para dizer, meu. Se ele pudesse dizer isto fora de um corte, o gajo rasgava-os todos, man.
What role did you play with respect to the payments ultimately?
A cara do gajo.
Sustain as to hearsay. Next question.
What role did you play with respect to the payments ultimately made?
Caralho, mano. Atenção no ar.
We supplied the payments to Ms. Heard in accordance with the agreement, either on or before the date in which they were required to be paid. The first payments made to Ms. Heard was $2 million in 2017. Then in April of 2017, another payment of $1 million made payable directly to Ms. Heard was made. Then in August of 2017, another $1 million was paid directly to Ms. Heard. Then in November, $500,000 was paid directly to Ms. Heard. My colleagues drafted those checks, I executed them, they were delivered on a timely basis. Therefore, in 2017, she was paid $4.5 million directly paid to her. Then on February 1 of 2018, she was paid the final installment of $2.3 million for total payments that went directly to Ms. Heard of $6.8 million.
Do you know when this lawsuit was filed?
Yes, it was filed in March 1.
6,8 milhões diretamente para ela. 200 mil desses 6,8 foram para aqueles hospitais. Ok? A caridade, supostamente, foram para aqueles hospitais.
2019.
Foda-se, bro.
Were the payments that were made on Mr. Depp's behalf directly to Ms. Heard the only economic benefit she received?
Objection leading.
I haven't heard the. Go. I'll overrule the objection for us now. Go ahead.
Mano, o gajo nem fez a pergunta ainda, bro.
Were the payments made on to Ms. Heard the only economic benefits that she received from the settlement agreement?
No, as I shared with you earlier, Mr. Depp was required to pay $500,000 to Ms. Heard's counsel, which he did in a timely, respectful manner. He was also required to pay all the community liabilities, which accumulated during their 15-month marriage, was approximately $13,500,000.
Como?
So he paid all the community during their 15-month liabilities, which accumulated during their 15-month marriage, was approximately $13,500,000. So he paid all the community liabilities. She paid none of them. That's why you have to aggregate the money that was paid directly to her, the money that was paid to her, to the charities on her behalf, the money that was paid to her attorneys, and the relief of all these liabilities that he had to satisfy. That's why I said to you, Counselor, that the total consideration paid to her was $14,250,000, and she demanded that that payment be made free of taxation, that Mr. Depp would have to satisfy all the tax liabilities.
Jesus Christ,
How long
bro.
were they married for?
They were married for 15 months.
Okay. Were the payments that went to Ms. Heard the only payments that you've made on Mr. Depp's behalf?
No, we satisfied all of his obligations, so it was very customary for us to pay everything that Mr. Depp was obligated to pay.
Are you familiar with an entity known as 2020 Wine Merchants?
Yes, I am.
Why are you familiar with it?
It's a prominent purveyor of wine in Los
Objection,
Angeles,
Your Honor.
California.
Foundation, hearsay,
I don't see the hearsay, but I don't know.
foundation at this point.
Mano, este advogado é tão mau, bro. São tão péssimos. Man, qual hearsay, bro? Man,
Can we agree?
Sure, sure.
shut the fuck up, man. Aqueles que já coçam a testa, puto. Mano, este gajo tem que ser despedido. Este advogado é péssimo, bro. Toda a gente se ri lá atrás, bro. Que horríveis, mano.
So I asked you how. All right. I think where we left off is I asked you how were you familiar with 2020 Wine Merchants, and if that's not what I asked you, that's what I'm asking you now.
2020 is a highly recognized purveyor of wine in Los Angeles, along with other companies.
What involvement, if any, did you have with 2020?
I satisfied the liabilities that Mr. Depp incurred, which at the dissolve of their marriage was approximately $160,000.
Okay.
Do you continue to pay Mr. Depp's wine bill?
Yes, I do. We pay all of his obligations, but his wine bill has shrunk to virtually zero because he does not consume that much in the way of wine. He's made a few gifts around Christmas time, but his wine bill has gone to virtually zero.
Are you familiar with a Spanish wine known as Vega Sicilia?
Yes,
How are
Uau.
you familiar with that?
I know that it is a
Portanto, ele
very
parou de beber.
expensive wine, and that I know that Miss Heard enjoyed drinking the wine.
Ai, mano. Que escândalo, puto. Ai, é com caralho, bro.
How much does it cost?
The cost of the wine is approximately $500 a bottle.
Foda-se, mano. 500 euros.
Were you
$500.
ultimately charged with paying for the wine that was served on at the birthday party on April 21, 2016?
Yes, I was. We rendered the
Objection,
payment for that
foundation.
balance.
Excuse me. I'll overrule the objection.
Foundation.
ouvir hey!
Hey!
Tias lindo.
Obrigado, Aster. Obrigado pelos 2 euros, meu. Muito obrigado. Agradecido. Também.
How many bottles of Vega Sicilia were served?
At Miss Heard's request, she ordered 5 bottles of the wine
Ok.
and 8 bottles of other wine. So a total of 13 bottles of wine.
Certinho.
Thank you, Mr. White. I have no other questions
All right,
this
Ross.
witness this time.
13,
Crossing, yeah.
13 garrafas.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. White.
Good afternoon, Counselor.
Your firm has been paid millions of dollars by Mr. Depp and his companies since you were first retained in 2016, correct?
Correct?
And in fact, you're being paid for the time that you're sitting on that witness stand today, aren't you?
No.
Well, you charged the time that you spent
Então não o deixa responder?
in connection with legal proceedings in this case, correct?
That's correct, but I charge for my time.
Yeah.
And it's the same time.
You answer my
I would
question, sir. In
charge-
fact, you charge $710 an hour for your time, don't you?
Counsel, if you let me complete my answer, I'll
No,
be happy to respond.
Sir, please try to stick to the question that I'm asking you. You've had your chance to go well beyond the question being asked, but if you could just please stick to the question I'm asking you, it would go a lot faster.
Could you, I don't think your microphone was on there. Well, it's not really badgering, not
Yeah,
an
thank you, Your
objection,
Honor.
but that's all right. So just if you could answer the question that's asked, okay? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I
Let me start over, sir. You charge Mr. Depp $710 an hour for the work that you do for him, don't
E
you?
então, qual é que é a
That is my
cena?
standard rate for all clients, and yes, I do charge that rate to Mr. Depp.
And you gave a deposition in this case. Do you remember that? On or around February 2nd, 2022?
Yes,
And that day, you charged Mr. Depp $710 an hour for the time that you spent giving testimony that day, didn't you?
yes, I did.
And you charge Mr. Depp $710 an hour for anything that you do in connection with his account, don't you?
Yes, I do.
You have about 6 people working on Mr. Depp's account, correct?
Yes,
And whether through you or one of your colleagues, your main contact with Mr. Depp and his companies is his sister, Christy Dombrowski, correct?
no,
Who is your main contact?
Mr. Depp.
One of your colleagues maintains active communication with Christy Dombrowski, correct?
Could you ask the question again, Counselor?
One of your colleagues maintains active communication with Christy Dombrowski, correct?
No,
Mano, ele está a tentar descredibilizá-lo, que é, está a tentar dizer que basicamente dizer que por ele estar ali a receber dinheiro que o testemunho dele vai ser falso. Então, ou seja, por ele ser contratado pelo Johnny Depp para tipo fazer serviços de contabilidade, que basicamente tira-lhe a credibilidade. Putz, imaginem, isto é bué nojento, mano. Pá, eu percebo que seja uma cena normal, mas é bué nojento, mano. Foda-se. Tipo, imaginem resumir uma pessoa ao serviço que disponibiliza pela profissão dele. Putz, man, e sugerir com isso que é uma pessoa pouco íntegra. Aí, mano, é bué nojento, mano. Foda-se.
All right, yes, sir. Thank you.
Já fizeram o mesmo com a psicóloga. Eles têm que fazer isso com todas as testemunhas, a realidade.
Mr. White, I've handed you the transcript from your deposition that you gave in this case on February 2nd, 2022. You remember that? You did it over Zoom?
yes, I do.
Okay. And you swore to tell the truth in that deposition as best you can, correct?
Sim.
Yes,
Okay. Can you turn to page 116 of your deposition transcript?
certainly. Did you say 16, Counselor?
116. 116.
O senhor não ouve bem, by the way. Dá para perceber. Pois é. Eles estão a fazer o melhor que podem, né? Yeah.
Okay, I have it.
And now you just answered no to the question about your colleagues maintaining communication with Christy Dombrowski, but at your deposition just 2 months ago, on line 11 of page 116, the question is, what about Christy Dombrowski? The answer that you gave is, I haven't spoken to Christy in some time. One of my colleagues probably maintains an active basis of communications between her and our firm. Did I read that right?
Yes, but you
That
need to
was
you
my
need to
question,
find the
just if
term.
I read that right, sir. Now, part of the services that you provide, that your firm provides to Mr. Depp, is to pay...
Olha o gajo a rir-se. O Johnny deve estar a rir para ele, man.
Correct?
Yes,
And you make payments relating to maintenance or damages to his properties, correct?
Foda-se.
Yes.
Now, you were contacted in early 2016, right? You testified to that to do work on behalf of Mr. Depp?
We were engaged in March
Engaged.
of 2016, if that's your question.
Right. Around February 10th, is that when you were first contacted?
I do not recall the date.
And you said you were introduced by executives, a guy named Richard Smith at the Bank of California.
Yes.
Mr. Depp owed significant amount of money to the Bank of California at that time, correct?
No.
He owed money to the Bank of California, correct?
I do not recall that he had an active indebtedness with the Bank of California. He had other commercial loans, but not with the Bank of California.
And after you were brought on, you developed an understanding that Mr. Depp's financial status was very challenging, correct?
It was challenging, but we had an ability to resolve the problems if they were properly addressed.
He had liquidity problems, right?
He had substantial assets in excess of his liabilities, but he had short-term obligations that needed to be satisfied.
Let me just ask that again. At the time that you were brought on, he had liquidity problems, correct?
Can you define liquidity for me?
I'm asking you. At the time he was
Não, bro, tipo, explica-lhe o que é que queres dizer.
liquidity problems, correct?
I would define the term liquidity as where the short-term assets are less
Sabem qual é que é a cena? Agora, aqui é que os fodem. Porque imaginem, os advogados, obviamente, tipo, a especialidade deles é lei, certo? Como é que vocês fodem o advogado? Com especialidade. O advogado aqui está a tentar entrar no campo da contabilidade. E no campo foi exatamente essa a esparrela que eles cometeram com a gaja, com a psicóloga. Foi exatamente essa. Foi, eles tentaram entrar diretamente no campo de estudo da gaja para provar que a gaja era incompetente. E os gajos dão-lhes um baile, mano, mas um baile absurdo nestes campos. Tipo, este gajo já o vai foder, meu. Este gajo já vai foder o gajo, meu. Agora já entrou na cena dele. O gajo agora, tipo, sabe o que é liability. Agora vai pedir ao advogado para definir. O gajo não consegue, ele vai definir da forma dele. Pá, é legítimo. Isto é perfeitamente legítimo. É assim que vocês fodem os advogados.
liabilities. And if that's how you define liquidity, I would agree.
Ok.
In layman's terms that I can understand, because I don't speak all the kind of business school terms that you speak. He didn't
Eu não
have
vos
enough
disse.
money at the time.
Já está a
Spending
avançar.
money he was bringing in, correct?
Yes.
And you gave him advice about how he could hopefully get out of that problem, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And just to be clear, Mr. White, because you've testified to some degree of knowledge about wine that you allege that Ms. Heard requested. So you seem to have some knowledge of Mr. Depp's spending. Ms. Heard didn't buy any of the dozens of properties that
Quais
Mr.
copos?
Depp owned, correct?
Correct. He owned the assets prior to
Bazaram.
marriage.
Estavam à porrada. What?
And you gave him advice about how he could hopefully get out of that problem, correct?
Yes.
Advice about how he could hopefully didn't have enough money at the time for the kind of business school terms that you speak. He didn't have enough. I don't. To be clear,
Não sei o que é que aconteceu.
wine that you allege that Ms. Heard requested.
Estavam
So
só
you
a ir
seem
lá
to have
ver.
some knowledge of Mr. Depp's spending. Ms. Heard didn't buy any of the dozens of properties that Mr. Depp owned, correct?
Correct. He owned the assets prior to their marriage.
She didn't pay $5 million to blast Hunter Thompson's ashes out of a cannon, did she?
Not to my knowledge.
She didn't buy a yacht that she couldn't afford and then have to sell it to J.K. Rowling, did she?
Oh, bro, o que é isto, mano? What the fuck, bro? Tipo, what the fuck, mano? Oh, mano, what the fuck, bro? Mano, isto é muito abaixo, puto. What the fuck is happening? Mano, então o gajo está a dizer... O gajo está, tipo, basicamente a mandar... Isto é um discurso bué, tipo... Nojento, mano. O gajo está a dizer que a Amber Heard não comprou um iate que não podia pagar e o vendeu à J.K. Rowling. Foi o que o coisa fez. Obviamente, o Johnny Depp. Mano, mas foda-se, puto. Mas qual é que é a relevância disto? Puto, eu já tinha... Isto tem alguma relevância para o caso? Isto já é um objection relevance ou não? Aqui... Manuel, obrigado pelo Prime, man. Thank you. Qual é a relevância disto no depoimento deste senhor? Manuel, obrigado pelo Prime.
Not
Objection?
to my knowledge.
Now let's talk
Obrigado,
about
Manuel.
that meeting on April 21st, 2016. You said the meeting started at about 7:30 p.m.
Yes.
and lasted till maybe 9:30. Is that right?
Yeah, sabes qual é que foi o maior gasto impulsivo que ele fez? Foi pagar 14 milhões à ex-mulher.
And you have no idea,
Foi casar com ela sequer.
no personal knowledge where Mr. Depp went after he left that.
Esse é que foi o maior gasto impulsivo dele, puto.
That is correct. I did not go with him. I went home.
And at that meeting, Mr. Depp was given some catastrophic news about his business, correct?
He was given news that he needed to address a number of financial issues, but I had a strategy and plan to fully resolve them.
Catastrophic.
That news that he was given that night was catastrophic, wasn't it?
No.
O que é uma catastrophic news?
May I approach, Your Honor?
All right, yes, sir.
Não, ainda não ganhou. Ainda, isto não acabou e nem vai acabar tão cedo, acho eu. Pois tem, aquilo Catastrophic news. O senhor usa óculos para ver ao longe.
Mr. White, let's do this again with another under oath series of statements. You gave testimony in the UK trial, did you not?
Yes.
And that testimony was under oath, correct?
Yes.
All right. And in front of you, I have your testimony
O que é que ele demorou tanto
from
tempo?
the UK trial, and you gave that testimony on behalf of Mr. Depp, correct?
I gave it honestly.
Okay. You gave it on behalf of Mr. Depp, correct? You were one of his witnesses called.
That is correct.
Okay. Can you please turn to page 865?
Esses depoimentos não vão entrar, eles já disseram que não vão depor.
Before that, the questions are talking about this meeting on April 21st, 2016. And you were asked the question, now Mr. Depp was given some catastrophic news about his business. Answer, that is correct. Did I read that
Foda-se.
right?
You did, but remember,
That was just
when
my
I get a
question.
chance
You
to
answered my
respond,
question, sir. You answered
I
my
did not
question.
define that.
Sir, Mr. You'll have a chance. The attorney will get back up and redirect you. Okay, so if you can just answer his question, that's
Okay.
fine.
And the reason I'm asking, sir, is because you just gave the exact opposite testimony here. So that's why we pointed that out. Now, you at this meeting, you had a discussion about his financial affairs and a necessity to formulate a revised business strategy and plan.
Eu acho que imaginem. Será que para o júri é giro ver um advogado a basicamente encostar um senhor mais velho tipo à parede com perguntas destas tipo? Mano, eu não sei, bro.
Yes.
And you talked about the following financial information. You talked about bank obligations and tax liabilities, right?
Yes.
Which means money you owe to either the government or banks, correct?
Yes.
You talked about assets that he needed to sell, correct?
Yes.
Properties and things like that he needed to sell to generate money.
Correct.
You talked about ways to reduce spending, correct?
Yes.
And you talked about how to get new engagements, correct?
Yes.
How to get new gigs, right?
Not how to get them, but
The
I
need to
encourage
get
to get them. I'm not an
Understood.
agent.
I
do
appreciate
not
that.
procure his engagements.
And understood. You talked about the need to get new gigs to generate additional money to help address these financial woes that he was experiencing, correct?
Já, Berna.
Yes.
You also told him at that meeting that
Caramba, obrigado pelo Prime, man.
Marcelo
Obrigado,
Rebelo de
man.
Sousa
Obrigado por 3
juntou-se
minutos.
com bandidos, deles é um bandido, verdadeiramente.
Obrigado, man.
Bandidos.
Mano, imagina, o júri são pessoas tipo comuns, certo? Ou são advogados, ou são pessoas formadas em lei. Caramba, obrigado pelos 3 meses. O júri basicamente são pessoas tipo normais, né? Escolhidas para vir a decidir neste caso. São pessoas, são civis, pronto. Agora a questão é, vocês acham que não tem influência para um civil? Para um civil? Esse tipo de cenas, tipo, ou seja, por muito que seja Por muito que seja. Obrigado, né, qualquer dá o shout, mano. Obrigado. Obrigado. Tive cada um cívico. Crown, obrigado por 3 meses, mano. Né, qualquer, obrigado por sub shout. Thank you, man. Ou seja, são pessoas escolhidas aleatoriamente. Vocês acham que tipo, são só os factos que essas pessoas analisam ou elas têm em conta estas merdinhas? Porque eu acho que elas vão ter em conta estas merdinhas, meu. Overall. É impossível estas pessoas não terem em conta essas merdinhas. Percebem? Estão a perder, por isso fazem estes ataques out of nowhere para tentar pegar algo.
His taxes, he hadn't paid taxes in years, correct?
Estou a reagir ao
No, that's not correct.
julgamento de
He
Johnny
had not
Depp.
paid any taxes in years is not correct.
That he was significantly delinquent in federal tax obligations dating back years, correct?
I don't know how you're defining years. There were delinquent liabilities. I addressed them and formulated a plan.
Pronto. Pois, claro. É isso que eu digo. Ou seja, por um júri ver este senhor a
And you
tratar
talked
este
about the significant delinquent tax liabilities that would run into the millions of dollars for taxes unpaid, correct?
That is correct.
Como é que é, Tomás? Fedido, pá. E este julgamento é longo, meu. Pois tem, este sistema judicial tem muitos problemas. Reparem
So after receiving this catastrophic news, as we discussed, you have no idea where Mr. Depp went when he walked out of the doors of his office, correct?
I do not know
Okay.
where he went.
Can you pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 936, please?
Aquele gajo também só se ri, bro. Aquele gajo lá atrás. O homem tipo está a achar isto incrível.
And Mr. White, I'm not gonna.
Mas o Ben Chu nunca lá vai
long
falar.
document.
É estranho ele nunca lá ir falar, é sempre só. Nem a
We can
Camila
scroll
Vasquez.
through, but what I'll represent to you, and Michelle can sort of scroll down, is that these appear to be Mr. Depp's tax returns for Mr. Depp and his companies from 2009 to 2019. Do you see that?
Yes.
Ah, foram no início, ok.
And these are returns as part of your role as his CPA firm now, his business manager firm now. Your firm prepares these tax returns, correct?
Yes,
And you maintain these tax returns in the ordinary course of your business, correct?
that is correct.
Your Honor, I know there's going to be plenty of redaction to do, but I just would like to move these into evidence. I don't plan to publish them or anything at this point.
Objection, Your Honor.
You want to approach?
Este senhor, tipo, não sei, bem, é estranho. Pá, depende. Acho que do lado direito, estas pessoas aqui fazem parte do júri. Deste lado esquerdo, as pessoas são convidados, basicamente. Será que, tipo, por exemplo, o Johnny Depp pode estar com o contabilista
Alright,
depois do
so
julgamento?
936 will come into evidence, but I'll wait for redaction.
Imagina, depois disto acontecer. Mano, é que, por exemplo, eu ia querer estar com o meu contabilista depois disto acontecer. Tipo, ia jantar com ele ou uma merda qualquer. Tipo. Ou seja. Da juíza. Ah, ok. Então não sei. Do lado direito da juíza. Então, está certo. Do lado direito da juíza é deste lado. É o que eu estou a dizer. Deste lado é o júri, deste lado é o público. Ah, não é no público. Então, mas não está aqui ninguém, puto. Ah, não os vês? Ok. Bancadas separadas, ok. Lado esquerdo. À esquerda dos advogados do Depp, à frente deles. Ah, então não consigo ver. Puto, mas aqui não está.
Your Honor.
Mas aqui não está mais ninguém, puto. Eu não vejo mais ninguém. Ah, não são mostrados por si. Ok.
Now, Mr.
Eu não vi
White,
isso.
you understood that
Já vi, Afonso.
Mr. Depp
Boa da vezes.
showed up hours late for work on Pirates 5, correct?
That is not correct.
Mano, mas, Buds, falámos sobre isso ontem, bro. Nós dissemos aqui que, a meu ver, este processo... Não, este é um processo fantasma. Ou seja, isto não vai ter consequências reais para nenhum deles. Este processo... Aliás, desculpem, deixem-me reformular. Este processo em concreto, em termos legais, não vai ter consequências. Ou seja, não vai haver consequências legais para nenhum deles. Naquilo que eu, da minha perspectiva, eu acho é que vai haver consequências, pá, no mundo exterior, ou seja, a nível de trabalho, para eles os dois, por causa desta sessão. Porque imagina, eu acho que isto foi estratégico da equipa legal do Depp para basicamente levar isto ao conhecimento geral do público, porque as pessoas neste momento estão todas, praticamente todas, do lado do Depp, mano. Todas. Ou seja, isto foi basicamente um processo fantasma para ganhar o apoio sei lá, da opinião pública, basicamente. Percebes? Ele já ganhou o Tribunal Social, puto. Ele já ganhou o Tribunal Social. Tipo, ele já ganhou o Tribunal Social, mano. Toda a gente está do lado dele, mano. Praticamente. Eu tenho visto os comentários sobre isto. Tipo, grande maioria das pessoas está do lado dele. Aliás, eu arrisco dizer que antes disto havia muita gente já do lado dele. E depois disto ainda mais, meu. Isto não... Eu vou-vos ser muito sincero. Eu adoro o Johnny Depp. Se eu visse nestas sessões que temos visto ao longo do tempo que não há um fundo de verdade do lado dele, eu tinha mudado tinha mudado a opinião e tinha ficado a torcer o nariz. Neste momento não consigo, bro. Neste momento a única coisa que eu acho é que, mano, é que o gajo foi completamente fodido, meu. Completamente fodido. Completamente. Tipo, tudo aquilo que eu vejo, todos os depoimentos que eu estou a ver. Pá, eu ainda vou esperar que eles venham que o lado da Amber venha testemunhar. Por isso é que eu gostava que o Elon Musk e o James Franco fossem testemunhar, porque queria ouvir o lado deles. Queria perceber o que é que uma pessoa que está do lado da Amber Heard diz em defesa dela nesta situação. Até agora, mano, eu não sei como é que eles se vão defender, puto.
Are you familiar with Tracy Jacobs?
Yes.
That's Mr.
Eles não vão testemunhar, eles já disseram que não vão testemunhar. Eles já disseram que não vão.
And at the time that she was
O Elon Musk namorou com ela depois.
her job responsibilities, to the best of your understanding, was to communicate with you about Mr. Depp's financial affairs, correct?
To the extent she had knowledge,
Right.
yes, she would communicate.
And you and she did communicate about Mr. Depp, correct?
During the period of her engagement, yes, we did communicate.
Can you pull up Defendant's Exhibit 874, please, Michelle?
Aí ele apareceu com feridas na cara enquanto namorava com ela. Foda-se, isso não sabia, puto. What the fuck? Se calhar pode não ter tido nada a ver, né? Atenção. Pá, puta, sério.
Mr. White, do you see here this text exchange between you and Tracy?
Mano, o James Franco está envolvido porque supostamente o Johnny Depp tinha tipo ciúmes absurdos do James Franco enquanto ela estava a gravar um filme com ele. Tipo, a Amber Heard gravou um filme com o James Franco e supostamente a Amber Heard, os boatos são que a Amber Heard traiu o Johnny Depp com o James Franco e tipo, e o Johnny Depp tinha ciúmes absurdos do James Franco. Pá, e pronto. Espera, o gajo que fez da Aquaman, o Mamoa... Mamoa. É engraçado dizer esse nome só assim. O Mamoa contracenou com ela e ele acabou por pedir o despedimento dela do filme por ela ser psicótica, segundo dizem as notícias. E pá, eu não li notícias nenhumas que dissessem isso. Aliás, até ouvi o Jason Momoa. Aquilo que eu vi foi o Jason Momoa dizer que não tinha química com ela. Foi só isso. Agora, pá, não sei. É Momoa, não é Mamoa, mas pronto, ok.
Jacobs.
Mamoa. Se calhar Mamoa mesmo.
Your texts are in white and Miss Jacobs are in blue, correct?
Yes.
Caralho, calma, senhor.
Michelle, could you please scroll to the document that is bait stamped Depp 19246? It's about the fifth or sixth one down, please.
A Michelle é a juíza. Pá, eu não sei, tipo, é estranho, tipo... Não é estranho os advogados tratarem, tipo, a juíza por tu. É que parece que não há tipo respeito. Por exemplo, os advogados não deviam tratar a juíza por Your Honor e não Michelle, que é tipo first name basis. É estranho, bro. Não é tipo esquisito, mano, esta cena. My Lady. Não, My Lady não, puto.
Mr. White, do you see
Não é?
here
A juíza chama-se Michelle? Eu acho que a juíza se chama Michelle. Espera lá. Who are the Johnny Depp legal team? Não era bem isto. Eu queria era legal team, all these liars, ongoing. Não, legal teams inside. Ok. Pronto, legal teams. Penny, ok, esqueçam. A Michelle é outra pessoa. A Michelle se calhar é a advogada. Ben Rottenborn. Elaine. Não, não é. Esqueçam. Não. Ben Shu. Camila Vasquez. Ok, não, esqueçam. Não. A Michelle é uma senhora qualquer que lá está. Pronto, não é. A juíza chama-se Penny Ascarate.
third text down from
Ben
Tracy
Chu.
Jacobs to you, saying thanks.
Pois é, o Tiago Almeida era advogado, é verdade, não me lembrava disso. Olha, boa pessoa.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
It's not hearsay, it's party opponent. She's his agent. I'm happy to approach if you'd like to discuss.
O gajo já tinha dito muita merda a teu amigo. Fui ver as chatlines dele. Avançar, que eles aqui não dizem nada. Ei caralho, eles tiveram ali bué de tempo a falar. É? Ai, credo. Foda-se, quanto tempo é que eles sentaram ali? Aquela senhora foi lá entregar papéis.
We just saw the text that I started reading. Do you remember that text?
Yes.
Okay. We're gonna just
É a senhora que os fãs.
show you
Deve ser a que escreve a ata.
information of that page of the document with that text. So I just wanted, since you won't see anything else, I just wanted you to orient yourself.
Mano, o que é
that
esta...
is the text.
A polícia está sempre ali a passear.
Your Honor, that page or that
They're
text?
gonna redact it, just that one text.
Thank you.
Mano, eu gosto das caras que este senhor faz.
Your Honor, I would move for admission of this document as, I guess we could call it Defendant's 874A.
Okay, 874A with the redactions, all right? Thank
Como é
you.
que é 365? Bem, gente, aqui
Mr. White, you just testified a few minutes ago that
Ok, já não falta muito para ele
didn't
sair.
have any understanding of Mr. Depp showing up late for work on Pirates 5, but in fact, you received this text from Tracy Jacobs that says, thanks, I got a call from Disney last week saying he showed up 5 hours late for ADR work in London for Pirates 5. I really need to speak to him before he starts work on his next project in LA. Did I read that right? Permission to publish this, Your Honor?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Do you want me to respond?
I just wanted to ask you if I read that right, that you received this text message saying in part, I got a call from Disney last week saying he showed up 5 hours late for ADR work in London for Pirates 5. I really need to speak to him before he starts work on this next project in LA. Did I read that right?
I believe you read it right.
Thank you. Now, at some point you became familiar. You can go ahead and take that down. Thank you. At some point you became familiar, as you testified, with what Amber planned to do with money that she got from Mr. Depp in the divorce, correct?
Qual
It
dele?
was
Este
the
senhor é o
understanding from the
contabilista dele.
beginning The money would be contributed to charities.
The two charities, to the
Contracts are
Children's
drafted in that
Hospital,
manner.
Children's Hospital of LA and the ACLU, correct?
That is correct.
And as we discussed, you wrote checks to those two organizations that were part of Mr. Depp's divorce payment, but they were just sent directly to those organizations, correct?
Yes.
Can you please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 1639? Actually, let's do Defendant's Exhibit. Yeah, we'll do 1639. Thanks. Mr. White, this is a letter from you to the ACLU Foundation dated August 24th, 2016, correct?
Yes.
And as part of your work for your 100 or so high-profile, high-net
Já
worth
dá,
clients,
já.
you've helped clients set up pledged contributions to charities before, correct?
Yes.
And sometimes those payments are made over a period of time, correct?
Yes.
Charitable donations aren't always paid at once, correct?
That is correct.
And when you make payments on behalf of your clients to charities, is it customary for you to send a cover letter like this?
In some instances, yes. In some instances, no.
Okay.
But in all instances, that there is a signed agreement and an understanding that when the
Yeah,
payments will be made.
sorry, that wasn't my question. My question was just, is it customary for you to send a letter like this? And I think you've answered that. And so when you send letters like this on behalf of your clients, do you prepare such letters in the ordinary course of your business?
In some instances, yes.
And in the instances in which you prepare those letters, do you then maintain those letters in the ordinary course of your business?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd move for admission of Defendant's Exhibit 1639.
Any objection? All right, 1639 in evidence, and you can publish it to the jury.
A cara deste homem vai continuar a dizer que não. Porquê que este senhor tem bué de este senhor tem um problema qualquer? Tipo, olhem a cara dele, meu. Ele passa a vida a dizer que não. Ele diz, não.
And
Enclosed is a check in the amount of the which constitutes a donation to ACLU of Amber Heard. This donation is being made in accordance with Mrs. Pledge gift to ACLU Foundation. This check represents the first of multiple scheduled installments of the
And Michelle, if you could please just scroll through, Mr. White, I just want you to see there's the letter here. We'll come back to the letter. And then there's the check that you're making out to the ACLU. Then there's, I guess, the envelope or something, right?
Correct.
Okay. If you can go back to the letter, please. So in this cover letter, you tell the ACLU that you're enclosing a check for $100,000 and that the donation is being made in accordance with Ms. Heard's pledged gift of $3.5 million to the ACLU Foundation. Correct?
Okay.
Yes.
And you also write that the check represents, just go ahead, that the check represents the first of multiple scheduled installments, correct?
It was my understanding that
I'm
she
just
was
asking
going
if
to
that's what you
contribute
wrote. I'm just asking if that's
$3,500,000
what
to
you wrote,
children.
sir.
You've asked me a question. I'm trying to respond.
No, I was actually just asking if that's what you wrote.
Would you ask the question again, please?
Yeah, you write, this check represents the first of multiple scheduled installments to honor the full amount of Ms. Heard's $3.5 million.
Aí, mano, este gajo está-se a
It was my
passar da
understanding
cabeça.
She was going to contribute the money, and that's
Okay,
consistent
sir,
with my
I just
response.
asked if that's what you wrote. I think you've answered that. Can we please pull up Exhibit 1596?
Your Honor, before we go to the next exhibit, can I raise an issue with the
Okay, sure.
bar? Thank you.
1, 5.
Is this a letter similar to what we just looked at for the ACLU, a letter that you wrote that accompanied the
Pá,
check
joia, não
that
sei,
you
mano.
sent to the Children's Hospital?
Deve ter
of Los
algum
Angeles?
testemunho a dar.
Yes.
And this letter and whatever payment, this letter is one that you would have prepared in the ordinary course of business, correct?
Yes.
And you would have maintained this letter in the ordinary course of business, correct?
Se fosse para o caralho, está
Your Honor,
foda.
I'd move for the admission of...
Olha, se fosse para o caralho que está foda, hein?
All right, 1596 in evidence. You can publish it to the jury.
And Mr. White, this letter also says at the bottom that it represents, the check that accompanies this letter represents the first of multiple scheduled installments to honor the full amount of Ms. Heard's $3.5 million pledged gift, correct?
When I composed the letter, that was my understanding that she was going to give $3.5 million
Sir,
to charity.
you're really not answering my question. My question was simply, I understand that you want to speak your own narrative here, but my question was simply that this letter says that this check represents the first of multiple scheduled installments to honor the full amount of Ms. Heard's
A cena da carta que o gajo quer mandar aqui, a bujarda, é que ele disse que aquilo era o primeiro pagamento de vários pagamentos de 100 mil. Na realidade, ela não quis. pagar os 3 milhões e meio, não é? Ela só quis mandar 100 mil. E isso foi se ela quis. Porque supostamente aquilo que ele disse é que os advogados se passaram quando ele mandou aquele dinheiro para a caridade. Ou seja, o que o gajo quer dizer aqui é que ele está aqui a tentar passar a narrativa de que ele não pagou. Mas ele pagou. Ele pagou-lhe a ela. Ela é que não quis dar aquilo à caridade. Ficou com eles. Ou seja, eu não percebo muito bem esta merda. Ou me está aqui a escapar alguma coisa, ou estes gajos são burros como tudo, meu. Estes gajos são muito burros. A única coisa que isto vai provar é que a gaja não deu o resto do dinheiro para a caridade. É só isso. Que eles lhe pagaram, como ele já disse, no testemunho que fez ao advogado de defesa ao advogado do Depp. E basicamente o resto do dinheiro ela ficou com ele. Tipo, era suposto dá-los a caridade e não quis. É só isso.
$5 million pledged gift, correct?
Mas a cena é que ela não pagou. Isso é explicado ainda há bocado. Que eles deram o dinheiro a ela. Ela pagou a quem? Isso está provado que ela pagou? É que o hospital, as duas instâncias disseram que ela não pagou, que só receberam aquele pagamento. E quem pagou primeiro foi ele. E eles depois cancelaram esse pagamento. Ou não, aliás, não cancelaram. Aceitaram que esse pagamento foi feito para caridade. E o restante pagou o Depp à Heard. E ela não pagou o restante aos hospitais. É isso. E estes gajos estão a tentar torcer a narrativa para mostrar que era a intenção da Heard pagar os 3 milhões e meio a ambos os hospitais. Só que depois ela não os pagou. E os próprios hospitais já vieram ao público dizer que não receberam essa quantia dela. Portanto, não sei o que é que está aqui em causa.
Thank you, sir. Now, you hosted a dinner with Mr.
Para se divorciar, ela recebeu 14 milhões, meu. Ela ia receber 7 milhões dele. E esse dinheiro ela supostamente alegou que ia dar para a caridade.
Depp and Adam Waldman in 2016, correct?
I do recall that.
And that was the first time that Mr. Depp had been introduced to Mr. Waldman, correct?
I do not know that. To be factual.
Now, you are not an expert on California divorce law, right?
Correct.
And you're not an expert on the division of marital property in California, correct?
I'm not an expert, but I've been actively involved in numerous cases involving the dissolution of marriage and the related proceeds to distribute to each respective party.
Pimba.
Now, you can't give any sort of legal opinion or testimony as to whether or not Ms. Heard would have been entitled to more in the divorce settlement with Mr. Depp than she received, correct?
I'm not an attorney at law.
Okay.
I don't render legal opinions.
So, you've never met Amber Heard, correct?
That is correct.
The first time you've ever seen her in person is here in this courtroom this afternoon, correct?
That's my recollection.
And you have no personal knowledge of whether Mr. Depp engaged in domestic abuse against my client, correct?
I've never witnessed him involved in any abuse, and obviously I've never met her. I could not respond to that inquiry.
So the answer to my question is that it's correct, that you have no personal knowledge of whether Mr. Depp engaged in domestic abuse against Amber Heard.
That is correct. I have no knowledge.
Nothing further.
Period.
All right, redirect.
Portanto, ou seja, basicamente aquilo que ele tentou fazer agora no fim foi dizer que este testemunho foi um testemunho inválido. Só que o que é que acontece? Não está só aqui em causa se ele basicamente praticava violência doméstica com ela ou não. Aquilo que este processo de difamação foi levantado com a premissa dela ter prejudicado, para já ter tido parte ativa ter sido parte ativa num caso de violência doméstica e ter prejudicado o Johnny Depp financeiramente. É isso, e isto faz toda a lógica ele estar aqui.
Boas ti, fiz uma pausa no 12º por não estar lá muito bem psicologicamente. Vou para os Estados Unidos em breve e as tuas streams têm sido...
Ok, e falta aqui coisa. Mas obrigado, man. Obrigadíssimo. Pá, olha, fico feliz, man. Não sei o que é que as minhas streams foram, mas vou ver agora, pá, e fico feliz por isso, man. Obrigado.